All right, guys, we are now live for another Thursday night Conversations with Commodores. And I have some would say pleasure, some say burden of talking with two of the guys who are in my recruiting class, the class of 86, Thor Erikson in Alabama. Hey, Thor, and Jim Arnouts up in Michigan. Good to see you guys.
You as well. Good to be here, Bernard. Thank you.
And if, for those of you who don't know these fellows or me, we played the fall of 86. I graduated in 90, so my final season was 89. And the other guys, Jim and Thor, played one more season. They had the pleasure of going out with Coach Watson Brown's final season in the fall of 1990. I've been trying to do in my head some of the guys who were in our class. And of course, Wally Hubert and John Newman, DeMond Winston. Y'all help me out with some of the names because some of these guys I haven't talked to in a long, long time.
Well, it's there. Fred Peterson, Torrey, wasn't it
Torrey Price?
Chip Price, Torrey Chip Price.
DeMond Winston.
Yeah, he said that. Man, that is tough.
Jim Beatty.
Yep, Beatty.
Chris Twist.
Oh, the twist. That's right. That's right.
Who walk on Andy Tees.
Kenny Balls.
Where are they now?
That's exactly right. Well, one of the guys who I have kept up with, who was in our class, who you guys may remember from, where was he from? From the Chicago area, is the guy who's just joined us, John DiNardi.
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 He's connecting right now, but we wanted to keep it a surprise for you guys. But I've been
awesome.
Dino this week, and I thought Dino would be a great addition to our group right here. It takes a second or two for the audio to connect.
Tell him to unmute it.
Hey, Dino, you're still on mute, bud, but you're coming in. Take it off mute.
I had the same problem, John.
All right, there we go. What's going on?
Yes, God. What's up, DiNardi?
What's going on, Thor Mania? How are you?
Good to see you.
Great to see you too, man. How's life?
Life's great.
Fantastic. How are you, Jim?
I'm good. I got some Vanderbilt stuff on too.
Yeah,
but we didn't wear anything.
Yeah, no doubt.
No, things are good.
Awesome.
I think Thor sold all of his.
I got a Vanderbilt hat on.
Oh
yeah, but everything else you sold to Jim Cherry back in the day.
Yeah.
Well, he wore it out when we were leaving for our trips away, so it was always good to have him well outfitted.
Well, guys, the John DiNardi is also in our recruiting class. The fall of '86 came in with Watson Brown's first signing class, and is in the Chicago area. And I'm glad John had some time for us tonight. Usually, if you saw Dino or if you saw Thor, you also saw DiNardi around campus those years. And some would say that was a good thing. Others would say, I'm glad they were together.
The statute of limitations is not out on some of the stuff, so we have to keep it clean.
That's right. But, let's just start with you, Thor. For folks who hadn't caught up with you in a while, where are you living? What kind of job? Tell us about your family a little bit. And then
I live on Ono Island, which is a barrier island on the Gulf Coast of Alabama. I've had a house here about 17 years, have lived various places, but we always seem to come back to this place. I've been married 10 years to a wonderful woman named Jennifer. And
God bless Jennifer.
Yeah, God bless her. And I have a 7-year-old son. He's in the 2nd grade, named Gunner. And about the past 28 years, I've been in consumer products, both on the manufacturing and the distribution side. Currently, I'm a director of sales for a pet food company out of Texas.
Excellent. Well, that's good. I'm glad you're with us. I'm glad you're safe and looking fairly Thor-like. Jim, talk to us. Tell us a little bit about you and your family.
Yeah, so I'm married to Kathy. I have 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls. My oldest son played football at Ferris. My youngest son is a freshman playing football at Ferris also, but they're not playing football. They're shut down this fall. And then I have 2 daughters. both went to a Division II school called Northwood to run track. Things are good with all the kids, other than my youngest daughter has COVID, and I am currently in quarantine at my house. I own an insurance agency with 15 employees in Okemos, Michigan, which is just east of where I grew up. I live in Grand Ledge, which is just west of where I grew up.
Very good. Well, we certainly wish your youngest daughter hopefully to get through COVID very quickly. Dino, I got to ask you, with all that athleticism in Jim's family, that's got to come from Kathy's side, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's both of our Cathys. All the athleticism came from both Cathys. And it's amazing because we've been with them for a long time. So they're good women, that's for sure.
2 high school sweethearts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Dino, tell us about yourself and your family and what you do.
Yeah. So I live in Chicagoland, a suburb of Chicago. Same thing. I've been married since '91. So what does that make it, like 29, 30 years, something like that? I've got 4 kids as well. I'm a president of Ideal Industries, which is $1 billion, serves the electrical distribution market. And my 4 kids are doing great. And Jim, ironically, my youngest also has COVID. So so I've got three boys and 1 girl. My oldest, Stephanie, is she's a school psychologist, and I have Nick. Nick has been on this show. Actually, he played in the Final Four against Michigan when Loyola went to. He plays basketball, Jim, so not football. He was smarter than us.
Yeah.
So he plays basketball, or played basketball, and then Anthony, who's down in Clemson, and then I've got Matt, who's at Iowa State. So everyone's doing great. Awesome.
Well, it's so good to see you guys, and we're not gonna just go around. I want you guys to just talk whenever you want to. But the first topic I want to talk about is, how is it that you ended up signing at Vanderbilt? You all 3 of you guys were talented coming out of high school, had other looks, but something about the school just sealed the deal for you. And I'm not just talking about your recruiting visit and going downtown. I'm talking about anything else that was also part of that. So any of you guys just speak up. I want to know what brought you to Vanderbilt.
Can we mention Wally or no?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jim. Jump in, man.
All right. Well, here's my deal. I got recruited by Michigan my junior year in high school. I was 100% going to go to Michigan, and in January sometime, I don't quite remember. By the way, my dogs are fighting. This is like my work now that I've only had to do 2 days of working remotely, and my dogs always come downstairs and fight.
Awesome.
Whenever I'm talking with a client, just like now, like they know what they're doing. In any event, I was gonna go to Michigan sometime in January. They said, "Hey, you're not our #1 tier. We will not know for 2 or 3 weeks. I forget exactly which, whether we'd have a scholarship for you or not." And at the time, I thought I was the greatest thing since sliced bread. So I told them, no, not interested. Michigan State, which I'm still a fan, but I grew up in East Lansing. I never was going to go to Michigan State. I had some friends at Central, thought about that. Got recruited by some other Big Ten schools, Purdue and Indiana. And anyway, I went and took my visit at Vanderbilt and enjoyed it. Thought I would have frankly, a chance to play very quickly as a defensive lineman, and then that was it.
Who was your recruiting coach at the time?
Schmitz.
Coach Smith. Okay.
Schmitz, yep. And DeMond and I believe I'm not saying we're the first ever from Michigan, but the first from Michigan in a long time. And then there was I think when I left, there was, 10, 12 guys from Michigan at Vanderbilt.
Yeah. Thor, I know you had a stellar wrestling career in high school as well as football. and had considered wrestling beyond high school. But how did you end up coming up to Vanderbilt? I know Mark Bradley was the state of Alabama recruiting coach. He recruited me, recruited Stump, of course. But how is it that Vanderbilt just ended up being your final destination?
Well, ultimately, it was the only SEC school that had offered me a for sure scholarship. Auburn had, had some interest. Tennessee had some interest, but they never pulled the trigger on an offer. And I had considered wrestling. In fact, I had a couple offers to wrestle and play football at Tennessee Chattanooga. Naval Academy wanted me to do that as well. And so I really thought that that's what I was going to do. I was also offered by Memphis and Western Kentucky. And as it happened, I was going to go on a trip to Western Kentucky for a visit. And, Vanderbilt came in, Mark Bradley came to the school, was interested, said, "Hey, we want you to come up there." So I canceled my visit to Western and came up, and they offered me, and the rest is history.
That's right. Well, I always thought that maybe Auburn is where you'd land because of your buddy Rob Selby on the line with you. Your class, Rob, ended up at Auburn.
Sure.
But I always thought that might have been where you'd end up going just because of your connections with Rob.
Yeah, I thought about that. I also had some interest from Mississippi State, but ultimately it was the best school going to the conference I wanted to play in. And so it was, probably could have gone to Mississippi State as well, but it, thought that Vanderbilt was a better option at the time than Mississippi State. So it worked out good.
What about you, Dino, coming out of Chicago? What were your options and how did you end up?
So I had a couple options. My head coach had played at Rice down in Texas and Wyoming, Northwestern, obviously in the Big Ten academic school, and Cal out in California were my 5 that were interested or offered. And when I went down for my, again, not getting into the specifics of the recruiting trip, but when I went down to Vanderbilt, which was the third trip I took, there were a bunch of South Side Chicago guys that were in the room hanging out, and so it was natural. Bob Scanlon was from our rival Mount Carmel. Greg Smith was from TF South, and he was, which is another Chicago, powerhouse in football. And then John Gromos was a legend on the South Side throwing the ball. So when I walked in and I saw a bunch of guys that I was very comfortable and familiar with, at least, thinking, why am I going to go to Tennessee? What's in Tennessee, right? I'm a South Side Chicago guy. So it became very familiar, and they all speak the kind of the Chicago language. And so that kind of led me down the path. The other thing, quite frankly, is at the time I lived close to Midway Airport, and it was $69 for my parents to jump on a Southwest flight, right? And they didn't want to go to Wyoming, they didn't want to go to California. They considered Texas. And then, but that seemed like a likely place to go and get to and enjoy the games. And then at that time, Dennis Green was the coach at Northwestern. I think it was either that or his pay. And so they had not had a very good record either. So I wanted to get as far away, kind of, a couple hours away from the family. So that's how I chose Vandy. And then obviously the academics was a big play in that too.
And Watson was named very late in the recruiting season that year. I want to say maybe in late November, early December. But he had been at Rice and brought a bunch of those guys with him to Vanderbilt. Were any of you guys recruited to Rice and then followed the recruitment to Vanderbilt?
Yeah, I think that was a lineage for me, is that my head high school football coach had played at Rice. So he made the connection. And then I think that's how it transferred for me. I mean, at that point, I went to Rice after Vanderbilt, so it didn't make the connection until later.
I made an unofficial visit. My brother had played high school ball with Mark Bradley. Mark Bradley was his line coach. And I visited my brother the summer, probably of my junior year, and went to Rice, talked to them. And so I was on their radar, and that's how I ended up. When Bradley got the job, I don't even think he was named, and he came to my school, and said, hey, we need you to come up to Vanderbilt. So that's
Very
kind of
good.
how it happened to me.
What about you, Jim? Was Rice part of your picture as well?
Yeah, I got recruited by Rice when Watson was there. I was getting letters and updates on all those things. But I really never had any thought of going to Rice. One of my high school friends who I played football with, a year younger than me, I was familiar with Vanderbilt. His sister, and I think she was a swimmer. She was an athlete at Vanderbilt, and so I was familiar with Vanderbilt. And then when Watson went to Vanderbilt, then all of a sudden, okay, that's not that far away. Much like John was talking about, it's a little farther because for us to get to Detroit, it's about an hour and 15 minutes, but same deal, $59-$69 from Detroit to Nashville. And it's not that far of a drive. It's about an 8-hour drive, much different than going to Texas.
Sure. Oh, certainly. That's probably double the trip.
Yeah.
We're so old, it was way before cell phones and the internet. And the only way I found out about you guys, frankly, was reading the Nashville newspapers whenever they would just sporadically report something like that. And then, of course, after our signing day, I remember we received some type of a packet that spring that gave everybody's bios. So that's really how I learned everybody. I don't think I met anyone. There weren't any of the guys in our class on my recruiting visit. On y'all's respective recruiting visits, did you meet any of the guys who ended up being in our class?
I did not, because I was wrestling at the time, and I came at I think I came on a Sunday and Monday because I had a wrestling tournament. So I didn't meet anybody that ended up coming. I was the only person who was there at that time, so didn't meet anybody.
What about John, Jim? Did you guys meet anybody in your recruiting visits?
I did. We did meet Wally Hubert. I met Wally, but I had also met Wally and John Newman at Northwestern when they were in their travels too. So we had crossed paths a couple times, but that was it. I didn't meet Jim or Thor or any of the guys. I think it was just basically, if I remember right, it was Slaw Dog, Wally, and Smitty were taking me on my recruiting trip, and so around the recruiting visit. So that was the first time I got called a Yankee and understood what as they said, God damn, you're the biggest Yankee I've ever seen. That's what Wally said to me. So I said, well, son, I'm not from New York. And he said, son, anybody north of the Mason-Dixon line is a Yankee to me. So that was my first indoctrination with Southern speaks.
Awesome. Well, it's on my recruiting visit. Like I said, I didn't meet anybody, but we went to the Kentucky Vanderbilt game at Memorial, and Kenny Skywalker was the big player for Kentucky, and they just beat the living hell out of Vanderbilt that game. So that didn't help with anything, but that was neither here nor there. Memorial is still a very special place for all of us to go see a game. All right, we got some names that have rolled in here. Fred Peterson, who obviously was one of my roommates, David Kropp, and Gromos is watching us. Hey, fellas, good to see y'all. And of course, I got Dino, Arnouts, and Thor with me tonight. We're talking a little recruiting. And I guess the first time I met any of you guys was when we reported that August. I had come in early for summer school. Watson was not happy with me because Jim Andrews had done a scope surgery on me after graduation, and I did not want the Vanderbilt. Was it Pinky? I'm not sure who it was.
Yes, it was.
Pinky
Lipscomb. Yeah.
I figured you can't get any better than Dr. Jim Andrews. Plus, he was in Columbus, Georgia at the time, not far from my house, only a couple of hours. But I came in early to rehab and to go to summer school. So I'd already been on campus. And I'll tell you, one of the first times I met Gromes and Smitty and Slaw Dog and all those guys, we went to lunch on campus at one of the cafeterias. And I had never seen a human being put as much food on one plate as I did with Smitty. 4 dogs, it was a whole buffet on one plate. And I just sat there, I had one, whatever, and I'm just watching this guy, and he's 6'9". I don't know how much he weighed at the time. And the burgers look like little miniatures in his hand. That was my introduction to, guys so much bigger than me. When do you guys remember meeting any of the guys in the class, other than the couple on the visits?
Well, I remember walking in and I believe the first person I met was John. He was my roommate and came in and he's I'm relatively short, 6'1". I'm still a half-inch taller than Thor.
No
but
way.
John's I think 6'5", and I was certainly confident in my ability, but it did feel good when I saw another lineman shorter than me. I'm like, who's that midget? And his name was Thor Erikson.
Lou Harris has me as a half-inch taller on the official weight measures, and we know that that's the Bible. That was scientifically done.
Okay, sure. Dino, what about you after your recruiting visit? When did you first meet any of the other guys in the class?
Yeah, it was very similar with Jim. Jim was the first guy I met, coming in. I think it was August 12th or 10th was our first day, and sitting in that photo. I can remember seeing a photo that you posted with Wally and John Newman and you. We're all sitting around and Watson like kind of talking to the freshmen. So yeah, it was really Fred Peterson was early on. We met basically. We were on I think the second floor of Branscombe. Was it Branscombe? Called Branscombe?
Lupton House.
Yeah.
Lupton House.
Yeah, there you go. And so I could still remember me and Jim at the end of the hallway next to the lounge, close to the lounge. And that was the first guys I really had met. I had not met many of the upperclassmen or any of those guys.
Well, I had the pleasure, and I use that term loosely, of rooming with Jim Beatty for the first 6 weeks next door to Thor living with Kubo. So
yeah.
Imagine 6
No,
weeks.
I was with Twist at first.
Yeah, he was
with
Twist at first.
That's right. That's
Where
right.
is Twist, by the way? But anyway, continue.
But then Thor moved in with Beatty, and Kubo and I lived next door. And I made the mistake of leaving one of my sweatshirts. I doubt Thor remembers this. One of my sweatshirts was under his bed. And then my mistake was going to try to find it somewhere around Halloween. Anyway, I never got it. I left it where it was. Biohazard. Guys, we got some more comments and folks rolling in. Tom Gray, old quarterback.
Yeah, Tom.
Tony Piercy. He says, good to see you guys and the names from the past. Y'all look good.
Yeah.
David Kropp. Kropp says he hasn't strayed far from campus living in Green Hills. Tell Arnouts the benefit is when the wind blows in the right direction, you can still smell your locker.
Yeah.
Gifts keep on giving.
Yeah. Hey, I have a story, if I'm allowed to say, and it's a good one. So if you guys remember, the first few days, the upper class, it was just us freshmen for like 3 days or so our freshman year.
Yeah.
And then we ended up having 3 days. I want to say it was for 10 days. Maybe it was a week. I don't remember. And we had a morning practice. DiNardi already knows what I'm going to say.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah. And then we had a practice at 3:00, which was the kicking practice.
Yeah.
And then we had one that was at, I don't know, I'll say 5 or 6 o'clock at night. And at that point, when you're having 3 practices a day, you're just either going to practice, at practice, eating, or going to the bathroom. I mean, you have no understanding of time and space. Anyway, DiNardi wakes up and starts yelling and screaming at me, we're late for practice, we're late for practice, swearing every other word. I wake up in a frantic, and then I look outside, it's pitch black out. I'm like, yeah, SOB, it's in the middle of the night. But you really have no conception of what time or what, you're just either going to practice or you're trying to get to sleep.
That's an absolute true story. I tell that story to my kids. I said we were practicing so much for a 3 o'clock practice. You had to be there for 2 o'clock for tape and pregame and all that kind of stuff. And it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I woke up. It was dark. I'm like, let's go. We're gonna be late. We have to run the stadium stairs. Let's go. And Jim followed me. I think he actually out the door until he looked and he goes, What are you doing? What are you doing? It's 2 o'clock in the morning, not 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So yeah, I remember that story well, Jim.
The funny thing is they ingrained on us when we got there early, don't be late for anything. be there 15 minutes early. So, you were always worried you were going to be late for something. And so you were always like crazed that you had to get over there. And, unlike, they don't even do 2-a-days anymore now. And we were doing 3 practices a day, and it was crazy. You never knew where you were coming or going. It was nuts.
What were some of your impressions when you first got onto campus and were starting to meet the guys in our class? What was, do you have any recollections of that?
Well, hell, I'll go first. I mean, I got along with everyone. It was a fun time for me. I was excited. I was confident in my abilities. John and I got along well. Stump and I got along well. I didn't really know DeMond, even though he's also from, my hometown. But it was fun and exciting to get to meet everyone. And I had nothing but good thoughts and good memories for those first few weeks.
Yeah, I think we had a great group of guys that came in, and I enjoyed being there, and we had some fun times. And even through the craziness, it was fun. And I miss a lot of those interactions that we had. That was a great time. Some of those can't be told tonight, but we all know some of them.
I got some stuff I need to bring up, though.
We'll get there.
Wait, my internet is not working anymore. Hold on. Exit
Let me ask you, when we're getting out there those first few days as freshmen, and then the upperclassmen all come in, it's the first, say, 2 weeks or so of that just awful humidity, terrible heat. I know you guys up north really didn't grow up with a lot of that. So I know that was kind of tough. But here's my question. When did it become apparent to you guys that, one, we're playing big boy football. This is SEC Division I football. And two, you know what? I can compete. I may not have a position right now, but I know at some point I'm going to be able to earn some playing time. And we all went through all of those struggles mentally and physically. But I want you to kind of share, what was it? I'm not in high school anymore. This is big time.
Yeah, for me, it was, the speed of the game was a lot faster. You used to be the biggest or the strongest on your team in high school. And so I was never the strongest guy, that's for sure. But for me, it was more about the speed. And then I was just, coming from Chicago on the South Side, it was just, pick out the biggest guy and hit him. And I could still remember if there was a concussion protocol in our day, I got man-tooth sitting in my ear screaming. I'm in a 2-point stance as low as I can. And Chris Gaines buried his forearm right square in my head. And I think I still have some repercussions from that. But that was the first time I was, okay, this is big time football. And these guys are quick and fast and strong. And so that was maybe second, third day in with the seniors. And there was some good hitting going on. So that was my first memory. Like, okay, this is pretty aggressive, and it was fun. So that's what I remember. Gaines hitting me in the straight end, knocking my tooth back. That was the first big hit I had.
What about you, Thor?
I think it was, and we weren't even in full pads. And, in high school, I didn't really use my hands that well. I relied on my athletic ability. I usually was, if I wasn't bigger, I was quicker than the guy in front of me. I remember pass rush drills, not really using my hands and having, and I think it was maybe Doug Bradley, who was really quick, just run right by me. And it was, it taught me that, you had to do things a little bit different than you were doing in high school. Probably when I thought I could play is honestly when we started getting pads. And, I was on the scout team at the start, and, I was playing against the first team, and, I was able to block those guys, and I knew that, hey, I could play and give them the chance. And so, eventually I was given a chance and did play, a lot that freshman year. Not on offense, they moved me to defense, but it was fun.
For
But-
me, go ahead, Number.
No, I was just saying, I wanted your experience, your recollections of that.
Yeah, I mean, I was, whether it's reasonable or not, I was very confident going in my ability. Once we got pads on, I was playing on defense and was able to perform very well on scout team. I did get redshirted that first year. I do remember because DiNardi got to play in that first game, and I don't know if I was scaring him or hyping him up, but Cornelius Bennett, was on that team. He ended up not playing, and maybe a better player, Derek Thomas, ended up playing. But I kept yelling at DiNardi, I'm like, "You're going to be blocking Cornelius," and getting him. I don't know if it was making him nervous, but I was hyped up and I was excited for him, and I was excited to see him, play, and the rest of the team. But he was the guy I was closest with, and so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, Jim had me hyped up, man. You're going to Tuscaloosa, the home of Bear Bryant. I can remember, I'm from the north, right? And so Notre Dame was the echelon of football, Michigan, right? But he had me so damn hyped up that I think I came out of the first play. I came out of my shoes because he had me so hyped. You're going to the home of Bear Bryant to play as a freshman. So yeah, Jim, I still remember that conversation just like today.
Exactly. The funny thing about that game is, remember, they had us so hyped up. We had to identify where Cornelius Bennett was. And I remember sitting in a meeting before on a Tuesday, and I said to Mantooth, he's not going to play. And Mantooth's response was, well, he has to play. Because we engaged everything, on all practices where he was, identifying where he was. And then, like you said, Jim, he didn't play, but Derek Thomas played. And that was, after that game, I think decisions were made by the coaching staff, and they went a lot younger with a lot of the talent because they realized that it was going to be a struggle that year.
Yeah, and Mark Ratcher, I think, was sacked 7 or 8 times in that game. And that's just, it wouldn't have mattered who we put on the line. They had so many future pros on that D line and linebacking. But let's see, Jim, you were redshirted like I was freshman year. Dino, you were not, or did you end up being redshirted?
No, I played maybe 4 to 7 games that freshman year. I think the Auburn game, I did not perform well, if I remember right. And but yeah, no. Then sophomore year, I blew out my shoulder. That was my redshirt year, sophomore year.
What about you, Thor? I can't remember.
I did not. I played. They moved me to defense after the first game, and I played in a lot of those games, and even started a game or two later on in that year. So yeah, I played that year. I didn't play the next year.
You and Dean.
Me and DiNardi got redshirted our sophomore years.
I got you. Well, that freshman year, like any kids transitioning from their high school being the big fish in the small pond, we're all now very small fish in a really big pond. And we're not going to just a chump college from an academics standpoint. When did you find your footing academically as well as athletically? Did it immediately? Did it take the whole freshman year? When did you feel comfortable academically, or do you still not feel comfortable academically?
I think it took 2 years for me to feel comfortable. I had some stuff going on with my parents, at certain times didn't want to be there because of what, my mom ended up passing away at the beginning of my sophomore year, and she had cancer and was sick for that whole year and then died early the next year. But it took, into second year till I really got my footing academically. And, as me and Jim used to say it was about getting the job done. We'd stay up all night, cramming for finals. There wasn't a lot of studying that got done, but we had fun cramming for finals. But somehow, some way, we all ended up passing the exams. Sometimes the professors didn't know who we were, but it was interesting.
What about you, Jim?
I was not the best at going to class my freshman year. I mean, Thor and DiNardi weren't great either, but I was not good at all. Now, luckily, and really all the guys, but John and Thor and myself, we're smart guys. And so we could, figure, and I think from high school, you're smarter than the vast majority of people, and you can still get good grades and sort of half-ass it. At Vanderbilt, now all of a sudden, everyone is smart. You're not the smartest guy in the room all the time. I did end up not having great grades. I think I had a 2.4, 2.5. I was very scared, and I don't know if you guys remember this. John probably does. I think I stayed up like 3 or 4 days in a row studying for that Spanish final. Singing "No Sleep to East Lansing," "No Sleep Till Brooklyn" was.
No Sleep Till Brooklyn, the Beastie
Yeah.
Boys. Absolutely, I remember that like it was mañana.
But I did get a B on that final, but that was a struggle.
Yeah, I remember that now. Oh gosh, yeah. For me, I didn't really adjust till I got out of engineering. I struggled with engineering freshman and sophomore year, and Thor and I were connected. Unfortunately, both my father and his mother passed away, both of cancer, our sophomore years.
Yeah.
And so we were connected that way. But I faced I always wanted to be kind of an engineer. I could not take the calculus classes anymore. So as soon as Kubo went to another calculus class, I was lost. To put it kindly. But yeah, so once I got to the economics, which ended up to be a great move, and then I felt more comfortable. But those high level science and mathematics classes were not where I was destined to survive. So I went to the econ side, and then I had a much not easier time, but a better route for me actually. So that's kind of happened to end of sophomore year into junior year.
I can't speak for how it is now, of course, but back when we were in school, I didn't feel it was necessarily a benefit to stand out as an athlete in most of my classes. Either there was the professors didn't care for the athletes, not all, but a good percentage in my experience, or the student body just didn't, most of them didn't. Like if you were at a state school that had big tradition in your sport, that's a whole different ball game. But most of the time, I didn't even wear my team issued stuff because I didn't necessarily want to be identified as a ball player. And I hate that I felt that way in most classes, but it was to my benefit sometimes to take that approach. Now, I'm not nearly as tall or as big as you guys, so I was able to blend a little bit. But what about you guys? Did you ever find that or feel that way, that the professors just didn't care for you being an athlete?
I had a little of that. I think that the general we weren't probably liked as well on campus as probably they are now, or maybe a bigger school for whatever reason. And if ever anything happened, and there were a couple incidents where I felt it was to my benefit, where I separated myself from being a football player, because I thought that it was a negative connotation to my survival there if I said I was a football player or identified myself as a football player.
Thor, one of the problems though that you had is you had the sweatpants that you wore for 4 straight years.
Harry Buccaneer.
That led down all 4 years.
Yeah, well, it was kind of like a uniform.
What about John, Jim? What about you guys? Did you ever feel that or observe that when you were in school?
Well, freshman year, I didn't go to class that much, so there was nothing to observe. But by the way, I did finish with a B average at Vanderbilt. My last 2 years, I did extremely well. But yeah, sometimes. But there were also some professors that, liked athletes and talked to me, about the, upcoming game or what was going on. So, yeah, I mean, did I Was some of that there? Without a doubt, yes. I have no comparison. I, didn't go to another school, so I can't, compare it to something else, but there was some of it, but there was also some favoritism because I was an athlete too.
Yeah, for me, it was more the socioeconomic standpoint. From a blue collar South Side Chicago family, construction workers, and there was an echelon. Not only did I not have a car at Vanderbilt, that some people had 2 cars. I remember a couple of the cheerleaders driving around in Corvettes, and there was more of a socioeconomic flavor to me that I felt like, do I belong here? Is this the right spot? And then the football players were given in my case, I didn't feel like we were given any advantage. Whereas, the Notre Dames of my childhood and things like that, the football players were put on pedestals. I'm sure Thor in Alabama and Auburn,
Sure.
they were revered, right? And so Michigan State. Again, at the time you're living in it, I don't think it was a big deal, but for me, it was more the socioeconomic. Like I wasn't going to be able to go home just whenever I wanted, or just be able to go out and enjoy whatever it might be. So for me, that was part of the disconnect, or the way it looked at Vanderbilt for me, which I think is somewhat true still today. But
hopefully it's improved over the last few decades, but I haven't had a discussion yet on that with any of the current or recently graduated players. But we're now at the part of the conversation, guys. Of course, I'm talking with Thor Erikson, Jim Arnouts, John DiNardi, all part of my same recruiting class of 86. We came in with Watson Brown's first class. And if you're under the age of 18 and watching right now, I'm going to have to ask you to please leave the live session, because the question for the table for the 3 of y'all is, when you weren't diligently in the books, you weren't on the field, where did you like to hang out? Where were some spots that you went and just kind of blew it out a little bit?
What was why am I losing my mind? What was that bar we always used to go to?
Banditos or Jim's?
Banditos. Yes.
What was the little hole in the wall at the end of the road?
Jim's place. Jim's, right?
Jim's place.
Right by the Holiday Inn, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or maybe if it was Harlow Dodge, it would be Deja Vu. But I don't know.
And for those of you who didn't know, back in the day in the 80s, Banditos was directly across the street from the towers. And when I say across the street, I mean literally across the street. I think there's a florist right now that's there. But for most of the years that we were there, that was the spot to hang out. And that's where you found most of the football players at one point or another. What about going downtown? What about going to other spots? Did you guys ever travel out other than White Castle out in Green Hills? Where else?
I have a good story. Go ahead. I'm sorry, number.
No, it's on you, Jim. Tell us.
Well, and I don't know. We always used to go out to the Taco Bell, and I know where that was. I know we had to head west, north, and then a little west again. And we're out there, and DiNardi's talking about how he can eat all these White Castles, and for something, we had just gotten a couple times, and I'm like, fine, we'll go to White Castles. I said, you said I can eat 22 or 23 White Castles. I'm like, you're full of crap. You can eat that many. And so anyway, DiNardi's eating, and he's at like number 22, throws it up, eats the throw up, and then gets the 23rd down. And I think I had to buy the White Castles or something. But I think I feed myself. I was laughing so hard.
That was a $10 bet, and you had to pay for it. I was not going to lose it. And to this day, I still can eat 23 White Castles.
Yeah, but today, I won't go there. What about you, Thor? I know you were always in the mix, but kind of tried to slide in where nobody would see you. But you were always there. Where were some spots you liked to hang out?
We didn't go off campus a lot, far off campus. Stayed near campus. Banditos, obviously. We would go to Jim's place before it closed, and then really became Banditos after that. and West End Sandwich Shop. That was right next to Bandito's.
Mhm.
And you know, those are mainly the places. I was never the one to go to like the music clubs and all that. I didn't have much interest in that. I know a lot of guys did that, but I wasn't really into that.
Well, if you remember, Rotiers was also right behind the
Yep.
Eckards. That's still in
Still
play.
there. Yeah.
They're still there.
Yeah. That was a good place to eat.
There was a bar that also had live music, Exit In.
Yeah, exit in. Yeah.
It's not far from there.
Some of these places, Naumburg, I'm still banned from today. So I West End Sandwich Shop and oh God, what's the name of the place? There was another place.
San Antonio Taco.
Yeah, San Antonio.
There were a few that I was banned from.
What
And it
about
was guilt by association. I was totally innocent. I mean, with the wrong crowd.
what about Mazzio's Pizza? Do you remember that place underneath the towers?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
To mention, you know, I went with my girlfriend because she had the secret card where you could eat the Mazzio, where we didn't have it, and I never had any cash. And so, you know, she had the secret card where you could eat at Mazzio's, which was nice.
I tell you what was not nice was eating Gaddy's Pizza every other Sunday.
Yes.
All
Didn't
right,
we
if I
went
say-
to the Cooker, didn't we? Didn't we switch to
Yeah.
the Cooker after a
We
couple of years?
rotated there. We also went to Tony Romo's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
Tony
good.
And
Romo.
Fuddruckers.
Fuddruckers.
Yeah, that was good. I like Fuddruckers.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to give you guys a term and you tell me what this means to you. Snowbird report.
Wally Hubert out in the middle of the street, West End, with nothing on but his bathing suit.
And it's snowing.
It's snowing, yeah.
I don't think he had his bathing suit on.
Well, he did when he left the building. He didn't when he was outside the building.
Yeah.
You guys
Yeah, I
remember-
laughed so hard.
What, Jim?
I remember that Wally, didn't he have a mask on? I don't remember.
I don't
I certainly
remember that.
remember Wally at Bo Diddley concert, the
Yeah.
Right to Spring.
The right.
That was the greatest Wally of all time.
I thought I was gonna have a heart attack. I was laughing so hard.
That was also the same Rites of Spring that the Red Hot Chili Peppers played.
Yes. Yes.
Oh yeah, what was
That
it?
was between those two concerts. There was a best legs competition, and Wally was part of that, and that will go down in history.
Yeah, because he ended up having to go see the chancellor because there was a problem with his
Well,
not being
yeah.
able to graduate.
I knew when he got up there that, and if you guys remember, the person he was in the contest with, Moon the Crow, and the guy had no idea who he was dealing with. And I said, God bless. It's all out the door right now, and it got interesting after that.
Well, I will tell you, Jim and Thor, after having these discussions with my adult kids about Wally and the snake dance, Wally met us down in Atlanta for the Final Four, or for whatever game it was, and they got to experience Wally in full regale with a snake dance in the middle of Atlanta. And so the legend still lives on 3 years later. So it
Was he fully clothed, John?
you know what? He was fully clothed till about 9:30, and then everything else busted loose right there. So,
All right,
That's awesome.
the 18-year-olds can come back in the room. I've got a few more questions for you guys, a couple of topics before we get out of here. After you each of you graduated from Vanderbilt, did you continue to go to college football games? Did you continue to go to the Vanderbilt games? Or did you have a period of time where you were just mentally done with college football and you just it wasn't part of your life? Now, for me, it took almost 10 years for me to go back to a game of any caliber. I didn't care about the sport anymore. I was just mentally done. But that's just my experience. What about you guys? When you graduated, what was your experience?
Well, I'll go. Go ahead,
Jim.
Thor.
Go ahead.
Jim?
for me, I mean, I missed it. I listened to the Vanderbilt games on the radio, but for me to get it, I couldn't get it in my house. I literally had to go out in my car because it was on 1510 AM. And so I had to, in my car, I could get it. In the house, I could not. And I'd listen to the games. Now, my younger brother started playing youth football right around the time I graduated, maybe a couple years after that. So that it was fun to watch him play. I then coached at my alma mater, East Lansing High School, for 4 years, I think. And then my kids got I started coaching my kids in basketball, soccer, and all of those things. But yeah, I missed it. So I listened to the Vanderbilt games. I still enjoy watching football, and I loved it. And by my knees weren't rickety and I wasn't old, I'd go out and play some more.
What about you, Thor?
For about the first 10 years, I lived close to Nashville at that time, and I went to a lot of games. And as I got older and life happened and things drifted away, me and Jim always used to come down to a couple games. And as his family grew, and as I moved around with my different jobs in different parts of the country, kind of grew away from it. And I haven't been back in probably 3 or 4 years. And it's just tough to make the time as you get older and the family grows. And so I kind of did the opposite of you, Nomberg. I'm big at the start. I still, if they're on TV, I'm going to watch, and they're on TV every week. So I would definitely watch it, but not in person is tough. It's 8 hours for me to get there. So that's a tough drive with a young kid. So
what about you, Dino?
Yeah, see, I was more like you, Bernard. I was kind of got done with the 4 years and kind of took a little break. Had my kids kind of, 2 or 3 years after 90. My daughter was born in 94. So kind of got into probably a 10-year period, just like you did. In 1990, I graduated in 90. I think you did too, or these guys maybe 91. And then, started with the young family. And the young family wasn't they weren't yet in youth sports. So then about 96 to 2000, they start getting into some of the sports. And then, so I'd say about 10 years later, I started engaging more. I think I went to a couple games. It just happened so, that they were blowout. For some reason, I would go to the Florida games, seems like. And so I probably went to 5 or 6 games over the, 15, 20 years, connect with Smitty. And then recently, we all connected. It was maybe 2 years ago when we played Notre Dame, maybe even last year. There was a great group, about 20, 25 guys. Stump, Mark Johnson, saw him for the first time in a long time, and some of the other guys. So really kind of went in ebbs and flows with the family. So
one thing you guys triggered in my mind. I did have one exception. In 95, Vanderbilt played at Michigan. I think it was in 95. No, Notre Dame. It was at Notre Dame. Kubo and I went to the Notre Dame Vanderbilt game at Notre Dame. I do remember that was my one exception during that time.
Me and Jim went to that game. And,
yeah, we went to that game too.
And I was in charge of accommodations, and we stayed at a place where you had to get your pillow from the guy behind the glass windshield.
Yes, Thor was in charge of the motel. And he had to pay by the hour.
For the pillow.
Well, let me ask you guys, we've got 1 or 2 more topics and we'll get out of here. Let's go back to your playing days for just a minute. Who was the best athlete you played with or played against? Jim.
Yeah, the best athlete that I played against was Derek Thomas. And I don't know, the tackles were having a difficult time, so I don't know what year that was. Maybe that was, well, it doesn't, I forget what year it was, but the tackles were
87 or 88, probably.
Yeah, the tackles were having a hard time with Derek Thomas. And so we started doing bootlegs, and then we would bootleg away from Derek Thomas and then I would go and help the tackles because frankly they were getting beat pretty quickly. And he was like Barry, a 6'3", 250-pound Barry Sanders. And so I kept thinking, all right, Jim, just calm your mind and, you know, don't take every fake because he could juke. He was fast and had some serious moves. So he's the best athlete / player that I ever went against.
Before we get to you and Dino, I want to say hey to Greg Smitty Smith, who just joined us.
Smitty.
And hey, the tree monster, watch out for him.
And Edie Johnston Kelsey has joined us. Thank you, guys. Smitty said that Tracy Rocker
Yep.
was the best. What about you, Thor?
You know, those two were good. I'll pick somebody different. We played Mark Butte, who was a first-round draft pick from LSU. He was really good our senior year. There was also a guy at Kentucky that was a first-round draft pick. And I
started with the B.
Started with
the B.
Yeah, but he Oliver Barnett maybe.
Yes.
And he was beating our tackles so quick that I was playing center at the time, and I had to pick out. You know, our job was to look a linebacker and then pick out, but we had to go backside so quick. And when he got drafted, all of his draft highlights were of the Vanderbilt game, and it was pretty ugly. So yeah, Oliver Barnett was really good. He made a name for himself in a first-round draft pick. I don't know that he did anything in the NFL, but.
But what about you, Dino?
I remember Smitty trying to calm me down, and I'm pretty sure it was Auburn. It was Andre Bruce in '86. I was still a freshman.
One draft pick of the NFL by the Falcons?
Yep, he was.
It was pretty high up there. And I remember Smitty being right tackle, and Andre Bruce was calling over it might have been Tracy Rocker. I don't remember. Was Tracy Rocker in Auburn too?
Yeah.
And they were calling back and forth, trying to see who was going to get there. Hey, I'll beat you to the quarterback before number 77 gets there. And lo and behold, I was 77. So that was the quickest, fastest, strongest lineman, most athletic. Andre Bruce is the guy that I remember.
The best performance I ever witnessed was Chris Gaines at Tulane in '87 with 37 tackles. That's got to be a record of all time.
That's also known as the Pogo game, but I won't get into that.
It's also the game that Stump ran back the kickoff return.
That's right.
Back and kickoff.
Yep. Yeah. But Chris,
DiNardi loved that.
I can't recover from that one.
I think Chris made every single tackle
He did.
possible that game.
That's why I hated our defense is that we played that cock nose, and I didn't have enough discipline to play it because when I was in high school, I just ran to the ball and made tackles. And then in our defense, that cock nose was to eat up a double team every play and let the linebacker run and make the tackle. And I didn't have the discipline to play it, but if you have a good middle linebacker and you can eat up the two blockers and play two gap, that guy can make a lot of tackles, and he did.
All right, guys, last two questions. What is it about the modern college game that you wish you had when we were playing, or something that when we were playing you wish that was now going on? For example, remember the kicking tee? I was so glad they got rid of the kicking tee when I was holding, because that was just it was too difficult. Much easier just to put it in a spot on the field. I mean, that's a simple thing, but that's just one thing.
3-day practices are gone. I'm happy. I wish that we lived in today's time when it's one day, one practice a day, and you can go over there and it's kind of a more relaxing atmosphere. I'm sure it's tough during the 2 hours that they're on the field, but it's much more structured now where you can only practice so much. And I felt like I was either at Magoogan or going to Magoogan at all hours of the day and night. And I think now they kind of regulate it more than it was back then.
I mean, they don't go at 2 a.m. with Smitty and
No, you don't get up at 2 a.m. for a kicking practice.
Jim. What about you, Jim? Anything about the modern game that you wish?
The spring ball, especially if you were an offense or defensive lineman, which I believe now it's only 10 days of hitting and 5. I'm not sure. I know it's at least 10 and 5. We had 15 and 5 back in the day. But if you're an offense or defensive lineman, spring ball was rough because you were knocking heads for a while. And the concern of your getting injured. I mean, I knew they didn't want us to get injured, but we were hitting a lot. And so I'm glad that's been toned down. Obviously, the 3 days is just is insanity. Matter of fact, I got to tell a quick story. And I don't know if DiNardi was there. I'm pretty sure Thor. But anyway, Coach Sheppy was calling us names because it was felt like it was 110 degrees out. And he's in his plastic suit calling us every single name in the world. And all of a sudden he's yelling at us, calling us names. He wilts under the heat. Yeah. Once again, it's like
we're all there.
And he's in a plastic suit and he just melts. He just falls. And I'm standing there looking, I'm like, hey, should we even tell anyone? But we of course did. We of course stayed.
We stayed there for a couple minutes and let him sit there and then called people over. That's the same practice, John, and you'll remember this, that we were running the quarters and you told me, just push me into the golf cart and I'll fling myself into it and ended up.
Throw me into the golf cart so I don't have to run these quarters. To this day, I still would not run that. Bring me into the golf cart and I'll be done.
Coach Shepard is usually with us most Thursday nights, but he's working a middle school game and does tell all three of you guys hello.
That's great to hear from him.
Yeah.
What about you, Dino?
Yeah, for me, I don't know if you guys remember Monday night toilet bowl practice.
Oh, yeah.
That's where you're trying to move up or earn your keep or you get reps. So I don't think they do double practices. And then at 6 o'clock, you come back again and practice on a Monday night. I remember that. I'm sure they don't do that. You know what? For me, I honestly, I think this, some of this concussion protocol is smart. I think back in our day, we probably would have had a couple times where we would have been a little more protected. I know at least on the linemen. I still remember, who was it that got knocked out? Was it Everett? Or was it, who got knocked out? Was a linebacker got literally knocked out and was sleeping in the middle of the field? You guys remember that? Oh, God. But anyway. So
I remember one practice where Jim got knocked out and didn't know his own name and they threw him back in there.
No, that is a true story. It wasn't a good scheme. I was playing center and Craig Witt was the offensive tackle and there was a 3 technique. The guard pulled and I was supposed to reach play side, that 3 technique. So, I mean,
that was a terrible scheme.
I'm coming down hard. I don't, seeing it in film the next day, what happened is Craig Witt kneed me right in the temple. And I remember it being period 12, literally, and Thor and I both were playing center. Period 22, I woke up and I look at Thor. He's like, Jim, you got to go in. I'm like, what happened? I just got here. And so I told Thor to go in and I didn't tell anyone I had anything. And it was the weirdest experience, even weirder the next day, watching myself on film, having zero memory of that 50-minute span.
Oh, I remember the coaches just yelling at Jim, and Jim didn't even know where he was, or, nowadays that wouldn't have been like, Jim probably would have missed 2 weeks of practice, but, which is a good thing. But
Tony Piercy says, it was Everett Crawford, sleeping like a baby. He just laughed. He actually talked to Everett recently just about that a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
I remember that running off the field going, I actually think he's snoring. I can hear him breathing.
Yeah.
Well, now, I don't know if you guys have seen, but in practice, most of the players, if not all of them, wear an extra padding outside the shell of the helmet. And it's it's to help with just that very issue with the loss or prevention of concussions.
Doesn't that also read the, like, when you're hitting the concussion, or the read
Like
what
the impact power.
impact and all that
sure.
stuff?
Oh, and Tony went on to say, TP said it was Arnold Elliott who hit.
Yeah.
Arnold Elliott.
Yeah.
Elliott hit him. Yep. That's
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember
All right,
that.
guys, we're getting toward the end. Here's our last question for you guys. If you're a high school junior and senior and you want to play college football, regardless if it's at Michigan, Vanderbilt, SMU, or wherever, what's going through your mind? What are the kind of things that you want? If this is, let's say you're talking to your son or your daughter who wants to play a sport in college, what's important these days about picking out a particular school? Because I've heard many times, you're making a decision for these 4 or 5 years that'll set you up for the next 40 to 50 years. The modern athlete is not us. We're old. We're, if you remember, pterodactyls.
Yes.
But Dino, you've just had kids coming through, and Jim, you've got 4 kids who've all played, and I know Gunner's going to be an athlete. So Jim, let's start with you, Jim. What are some of those things that the modern athlete, the high schoolers, are needing to really pay attention to?
Yeah, I mean, and I've done that with all of my kids. It was easier for my youngest son because he's playing at the same place his older brother played, and so he already knew the campus, knew the coaches, was already somewhat part of in the ecosystem, if you will. But for my oldest son and oldest daughter, my youngest daughter went to the same school my oldest daughter went to as well. But you have to be comfortable and feel like the campus is going to meet your needs, the location, all of that. And then with the coaches, that you're comfortable with the coaches, that they are going to help you progress as an athlete. And I basically just left it up to my kids. They were, they for each of the different schools, they were comfortable. They liked the coaches. For me anyway, I mean, I gave them a little bit of advice and told them to follow their gut, and, knock on wood, all 4 kids, it worked out very well.
Very good. What about you, Dino?
Yeah, so for me, I did very similar to Jim, kind of just coached them through the opportunities, but more or less said, take it in. Sports is going to be something for 4 years in this case, but really take it in and enjoy the 4 years, because once you go on to work, you're going to be out in the working world. So really enjoy your time. I think we did. I think this group on the call certainly had our fun time. I just see it today. There's so much stress put on these kids about their scores and their, what schools they're going to get into. So I would say, I like Jim's advice, pick something that you're very comfortable with. And then I told them, make the most of it. My kids have gone everywhere from Villanova to Clemson to Loyola and now to Iowa State. So they all pick schools for very different reasons. But I wanted to make sure they were comfortable where they were going. And they also understood that, it's all really about the education and the life experience. That's kind of what I was telling them. Now Thor for you, it's exciting. Only having a 7-year-old.
I'll be the old man when we're trying to pick out I'll be the grandfather trying to pick out the college.
Yeah. Is Gunner athletically capable like you, or is he like his mother?
He's more like the mom, which probably is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll get any argument or disagreement.
Yeah, every time Jenny leaves, she says, the barbarian comes back in me. He's more towards her and her family, which is a good thing. The Erikson lineage is
the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I much like we did when we were in school, the 3 of you made me laugh all the time. And tonight has been no different. Laughter is such a very important part of the life experience. So I want to thank you guys just for being there back then and for sharing some time with us tonight. I've really enjoyed our talk.
Yeah.
Very good.
Awesome. I enjoyed it. I want to relive some of the other memories on the X-rated version when we can get that rolling.
Yeah, guys, we've got a paid site that will,
But that has to remain hidden.
I posted in the Facebook group, guys, there's a brand new organization. They're really the school, the athletics director, the department, Kirkland, there's a lot of changes going on, but there's some new outreach programs that hopefully are going to connect our generations with the younger guys. It's the Black and Gold Club. Chris Griffin, who I spoke with today, is a 2010 graduate. He heads it up. He's a former player. On Monday, and I'll send you guys the Zoom link. I've posted it in the group. On Monday, Coach Mason is holding a Zoom call for all former ball players. All former football players are invited and encouraged, and I'll send you guys the information. You just got to register ahead of time. But they're trying to reach out. They're trying to connect and do something, hopefully, that will be sustaining for the younger guys who need internships, mentors, maybe even job opportunities. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that before we got off the call. And the last thing I want to say to you guys again is just thank you for your time. It's always great to spend a little time. Hopefully next time we're at a ball game or breaking bread somewhere in person.
Yeah, thanks for organizing.
Appreciate it. Good
Thanks a
seeing you
lot.
guys.
Absolutely. And guys, we're going to try and do this every Thursday at the same time. Let's see. Next week, I've got a former coach, John Shoup, who played at Swanee, but was a GA coach for a year or two. He's been in the pros. He's been at Purdue. He's been at different schools, but he spent a couple of years at Vanderbilt in the mid-90s. He's got a real neat perspective that I think we'll enjoy hearing from him. And then in a couple of weeks, I've got Eric Jones coming up.
Oh, awesome.
I want to hear Norwich. Where's Norwich?
I tried to get Norwich. I tried to get John before the season started, but he's still with the Steelers.
Okay.
And he said for me just to get in touch with him beginning of next year, and he'll come on the show.
Nice.
Right.
All right, guys, y'all be well. Signing off. Take care.